Tighter, Margaret Holloway ordered. I want her to feel it. Thomas yanked the rope. Clara screamed as the fibers cut through her skin. Mother, please! Clara's voice shattered. I didn't kill him. I didn't kill him. Margaret slapped her across the face. The crack echoed against the howling wind. My son is dead because of you. Margaret grabbed Clara's chin, forcing her to meet those cold, hateful eyes. Now you'll die because of him. She released Clara's face and stepped back. The snow was already climbing past Clara's ankles. Wait! Clara thrashed against the ropes. Wait! You can't do this! Please, please! Margaret turned her back. Walter and Thomas followed. Not one of them looked back. If you believe everyone deserves a second chance, subscribe to our channel and follow Clara's story to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We want to see how far this story travels. You're making a mistake. Clara's scream tore through the storm, but the Holloways kept walking. Their silhouettes grew smaller, fainter, until the blizzard swallowed them whole. She pulled at the ropes. They didn't budge. Help! She twisted her wrists, feeling skin tear. Somebody help me. The wind answered with a howl that drowned everything else. Clara's breath came too fast. Her chest burned. Her fingers were already numb. Think, she gasped. Think, think, think. She tried to work her hands free. The rope was too tight. She tried to pull the fence post loose. It was frozen solid. God, her voice cracked. Oh God, oh God. The cold hit her like a wave. It started in her feet, crept up her legs, wrapped around her chest like iron bands. She was going to die here. She was going to die alone in the snow, and nobody would ever know the truth. 3 hours earlier. Clara set down her teacup. Her hands were steady. Her voice was not. What do you mean, a decision? Margaret Holloway didn't blink. About my son. Emmett is dead, Mrs. Holloway. He's been in the ground for 3 weeks. And whose fault is that? Clara's stomach dropped. Excuse me. Walter Holloway stepped away from the door. His boots were heavy on the wooden floor. You heard her. I don't understand what you're... Don't play stupid. Thomas pushed off from the wall, arms crossed. We know what you did. Clara looked between them. Margaret's face was stone. Walter's jaw was clenched. Thomas was smirking. Actually smirking like this was a game. What exactly, Clara said slowly, do you think I did? Margaret stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. You poisoned my son. The words hit Clara like a fist. That's insane. Is it? Margaret walked toward her. Emmett was healthy before he married you. He was sick for months. He was fine. Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. Strong, capable, full of life. Then you came along with your herbs and your medicines and your nursing skills, and suddenly he can't get out of bed. It was consumption. I told all of you. You told us lies. Walter grabbed her arm. Clara tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. You fed us lies while you fed him poison. Let go of me. Not until you confess. Clara's heart was hammering now. Confess to what? I didn't do anything. Thomas pulled a folded paper from his coat. Then explain this. Clara froze. What is that? A letter. Thomas unfolded it slowly, deliberately. Found it in Emmett's Bible, his handwriting, dated 2 days before he died. What does it say? You tell us. Thomas held it just out of reach. You're the one who made him write it. I never let me see it. Let me see what it says. It says, Margaret cut in, that he suspected you, that he was afraid of you, that he wanted to warn us but didn't have the strength. That's a lie. It's his own words. Then let me read them. If he really wrote that, I deserve to see it. Walter's grip tightened. You deserve nothing. Clara's mind was racing. This didn't make sense. Emmett had loved her, hadn't he? Even at the end, even when the sickness had hollowed him out and turned him into a shadow of himself, he had held her hand. He had thanked her for staying. He wouldn't have written those things. He couldn't have. "You're lying," she said. "You forged that letter." Thomas laughed. Forged it. In his handwriting. While he was bedridden. "I don't know how, but you did. Emmett would never. Emmett was weak." Margaret's voice was ice. "He always was. Too weak to see what you really were. Too weak to save himself." She leaned closer. "But we're not weak, Clara. We see exactly what you are." "And what is that?" "A murderer." Clara yanked her arm free from Walter's grip. She stumbled backward, knocking into the table. The teacup shattered on the floor. "I want a trial," she said. "I want to talk to the sheriff." "The sheriff is 40 miles away." "Then send for him." "In this storm," Walter gestured toward the window. The world outside was nothing but white. "He won't make it here for days, maybe weeks." "Then we wait." "No." Margaret shook her head. "We don't." Clara's blood went cold. "What are you going to do?" Margaret nodded to her sons. Thomas grabbed Clara's right arm. Walter grabbed her left. "No!" Clara kicked, twisted, tried to break free. "No! Let go of me! You can't do this!" "God will judge you, Clara." Margaret's voice was calm, almost serene. "We're simply delivering you to his court." They dragged her toward the door. Clara screamed. She fought with everything she had. She bit Thomas's hand, he swore, and backhanded her across the face. Stars exploded behind her eyes. "You're going to kill me," she gasped. "You're going to murder me and call it justice." "It is justice." Margaret opened the door. The cold rushed in like a living thing. "Justice for my son." "Emmett wouldn't want this." Margaret paused. Something flickered in her eyes, doubt maybe, or pain. Then it was gone. "Emmett is dead. He doesn't want anything anymore." They threw Clara into the snow. She tried to run. She made it 3 steps before Thomas tackled her from behind. Her face hit the ground hard. Snow filled her mouth, her nose, her eyes. "Get the rope!" Walter shouted over the wind. "Please!" Clara clawed at the frozen ground, trying to crawl away. "Please don't do this!" Thomas flipped her onto her back. His knee pressed into her chest, pinning her down. "Should have thought about that before you killed my brother." "I didn't kill him!" Walter appeared with a coil of rope. He grabbed Clara's wrists and yanked them together. "The fence post," Margaret called from the doorway. "Tie her to the fence post." They dragged her through the snow. Clara kicked and screamed and begged, but it made no difference. Within minutes, her wrists were bound to the rough wooden post, the rope so tight she could feel her pulse throbbing against the fibers. "Please." Her voice was hoarse now, broken. "At least tell me what the letter really says. At least give me that." Margaret walked to her slowly, deliberately. She crouched down until their faces were inches apart. "It says enough." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Margaret stood, brushed snow from her skirt, and turned away. "Wait." Clara's voice cracked. "Wait, please, Mrs. Holloway." "Margaret." But Margaret was already walking back toward the house. Walter and Thomas followed. The door closed. The light disappeared. And Clara was alone. The cold came fast. Clara couldn't feel her feet. She tried to stomp them, keep the blood flowing, but every movement made the ropes dig deeper into her wrists. "Help!" She screamed into the void. "Somebody help me!" Nothing. "Please!" The wind shrieked. Snow piled against her legs, climbing higher with every gust. She was going to die. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She was going to die here alone, freezing, and the Holloways would tell everyone she was a murderer. That would be her legacy. That would be the story they told about Clara Brennan. "No." She pulled at the ropes until her wrists bled. No, no, no. Her strength was fading. The cold was stealing it piece by piece. Emmett. She whispered his name like a prayer. Emmett, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. Tears froze on her cheeks. I tried, she sobbed. God knows I tried. Her voice gave out. Her body sagged against the ropes. The world was getting darker, quieter, softer. Maybe this wasn't so bad. Maybe dying was just like falling asleep. Maybe hoofbeats. Clara's head snapped up. Silas Garrett heard the scream before he saw her. He pulled Ghost to a stop, listening. The wind was howling, but beneath it there, a voice, faint, desperate, barely human. What the hell? He urged Ghost forward, squinting through the snow. The storm was a white wall, but Silas had ridden through worse. He'd spent 7 years on this land, and he knew every fence post, every creek, every shadow. That sound wasn't natural. Hello, he called into the wind. Is somebody out there? Another scream, weaker this time. Silas's jaw tightened. He kicked Ghost into a gallop. The fence line appeared first, a dark smear against the white. Then something else. A shape. A figure. A woman tied to the post slumped sideways, hair frozen to her face. Jesus Christ! He was off the horse before Ghost fully stopped. His boots punched through the snow 3 feet deep in places, but he didn't slow down. Ma'am? He grabbed her face, tilted it up. Her skin was blue. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing. Ma'am, can you hear me? Her mouth moved. No sound came out. Stay with me. He drew his knife and sawed at the ropes. The fibers were frozen solid, and the blade slipped twice before catching. Stay with me, you hear. I'm going to get you out of this. The rope snapped. Clara pitched forward into his arms. She was cold, colder than anything he'd ever touched, and she weighed almost nothing. Who did this to you? He wrapped his coat around her shaking body. Who the hell did this? Her lips moved again. This time he heard the word. Family. Todd. Silas kicked open this cabin door. The fire had burned low while he was out, but there were still embers glowing in the hearth. He laid Clara on the cot and threw more wood onto the flames. Come on, he muttered. Come on, catch. The kindling caught. Heat bloomed through the room. Silas turned back to Clara. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow. He pulled off her frozen boots, her stiff gloves, her ice-crusted outer layers. Stay with me. He grabbed blankets from the chest and piled them on top of her. Don't you quit on me. Don't you dare. Her hands were white. Frostbite may be already past saving. He found his mother's old medicine chest and dug through it, salves, dried herbs, clean cloth. This is going to hurt, he said, pressing warm compresses to her fingers. I'm sorry, but it's going to hurt. She didn't respond. Silas worked through the night. Clara woke with a scream. She bolted upright, hands swinging nails clawing at empty air. Her heart was slamming against her ribs and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Easy. A man's voice, hands grabbing her wrists, not hard, just firm. Easy, easy. You're safe. Get off me. She kicked out. Her foot connected with something solid. Let go. I'm not going to hurt you. The man released her and stepped back, hands raised. Look at me. Look at my hands. I'm not going to hurt you. Clara's chest heaved. Her eyes darted around the room, small cabin, single window fire crackling in the hearth. One door. No other exits. Where am I? Her voice came out raw, broken. Who are you? My name's Silas. Silas Garrett. I found you in the storm. Found me. She laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. They sent you, didn't they? Nobody sent me. You're lying. They got scared I might live, so they sent someone to finish. I don't know who they are. Silas kept his voice calm, his movements slow. I heard screaming. I followed it. I found you tied to a fence post half dead. That's all I know. Clara stared at him. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and rough hands. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, thin and white against weathered skin. His eyes were gray like storm clouds, and they held hers without flinching. The door's unlocked, he said. You want to leave? I won't stop you. But it's still 20 below out there, and you'll freeze before you get 100 yards. Clara didn't move. Who tied you to that fence? Silas asked. Silence. Ma'am? My in-laws. The words came out flat, dead. The Holloways. Silas's expression shifted. Walter and Margaret Holloway. You know them. Know of them. His jaw tightened. Big spread east of here. Cattle money, political connections. Then you know I'm dead either way. Why do they want you dead? Clara closed her eyes. The memories came flooding back: Margaret's cold smile, Walter's iron grip, Thomas's smirk. They think I killed their son. She opened her eyes. My husband, Emmett. Did you? No. Then why? Because he died and they needed someone to blame. Her voice broke. He was sick for months. Consumption. I nursed him. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. And now they're saying I poisoned him. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Do you have proof that it was consumption? I had a letter. Emmett wrote it before he died. He knew he was sick. He knew I was trying to save him. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But they took it. Thomas found it, and they took it. And now it's their word against mine. And their word carries more weight. Their word carries all the weight. Clara wiped her face with shaking hands. They're the Holloways. I'm just the widow nobody wanted. Silas walked to the window. The storm was still raging outside, but it was weaker now. By morning, it would break. Why are you helping me? Clara asked. He didn't turn around. Because someone left you to die in a blizzard. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Clara studied his back, the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like a man carrying something heavy. You said you know of the Holloways. What else do you know? I know they get what they want. Silas finally turned. I know people who cross them tend to disappear. And I know they've got half the territory in their pocket. So I should run. That's one option. What's the other? You stay, you fight. Clara laughed bitterly. Fight with what? I have nothing. No money, no proof, no allies. You have the truth. The truth doesn't matter when you're up against people like them. Maybe not. Silas crossed the room and crouched beside the cot, his face level with hers. But here's what I know: the truth has a way of coming out. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes years. But it always comes out. He met her eyes. Question is, will you still be around to see it? Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. Morning came gray and quiet. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of wood crackling in the fire. The storm had passed. Pale light seeped through the frost-covered window. Silas was sitting at the table, a cup in his hands, staring at nothing. You didn't sleep, Clara said. Didn't need to. She pushed herself upright, wincing at the pain in her wrists. The bandages were spotted with blood, but the wounds beneath felt clean. Thank you. Her voice was quiet. For saving my life. Silas nodded, but didn't look at her. What happens now? Now we wait. Roads are buried. Won't be passable until tomorrow at least. He took a sip of coffee. After that, it's up to you. I told you I don't have anywhere to go. Then stay here, Clara's breath caught. What? I've got room. He gestured vaguely at the cabin. More than I need. You can have the loft until you figure out your next move. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing. He finally met her eyes. And because I've spent 7 years alone out here. Maybe it's time that changed. Clara opened her mouth to respond. Hoofbeats. They both froze. Silas was on his feet in an instant, moving to the window. His hand dropped to the knife at his belt. How many? Clara whispered. 6. His voice was flat. Armed. The Holloways. Looks like it. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. I have to run. If they find me here. They already know you're here. Silas headed for the door. Stay inside. What are you going to do? He didn't answer. He just opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit him like a wall, but Silas didn't flinch. 6 riders had stopped about 50 yards from the cabin. Walter Holloway was at the front, flanked by his son Thomas, and 4 men Silas didn't recognize. Hired hands, probably. Muscle. Silas Garrett. Walter's voice carried across the snow. We know you've got her, send her out and there won't be any trouble. Silas didn't move. Morning, Walter. Don't play games with me. Walter urged his horse forward a few steps. That woman is a murderer. She poisoned my son. That's so. The whole territory knows it. Hand her over and we'll let the law deal with her. The law. Silas tilted his head. Since when do you give a damn about the law? Walter's face reddened. Watch your mouth. I'm just asking a question. You could have taken her to the sheriff. Could have waited for a trial. Instead, you tied her to a fence post and left her to freeze. Silas's voice hardened. That's not law, Walter. That's murder. She killed my son? Did she? Or did you just need someone to blame? Thomas spurred his horse forward. You don't know what you're talking about, Garrett. You don't know what she did. I know what you did. Silas's eyes locked onto Thomas. I know what kind of man leaves a woman to die in a blizzard, and I know what kind of family raises that kind of man. Thomas's hand went to his gun. Try it, Silas said quietly. See what happens. Nobody moved. Inside the cabin, Clara pressed herself against the wall, listening. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. 6 against 1. Silas didn't stand a chance. She should run. The back window was small, but she could fit through it. She could disappear into the snow, find somewhere to hide. But she didn't move. She couldn't. Something held her there, something stronger than fear. Walter Holloway's voice cut through the cold. Last chance, Garrett. Give her up or we're coming in to get her. Silas stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough. Untie her, he said. Walter frowned. What? I said untie her. Silas's voice was steady as stone. She's coming with me. She's coming with... Walter sputtered. She's a murderer. She's innocent until a court says otherwise. And last I checked, you're not a judge. The hell I'm not. That woman killed my boy, and she's going to pay for it. Then let her pay in a courtroom. Silas spread his hands. What are you afraid of, Walter? That a jury might actually hear her side of the story. Silence. Thomas leaned toward his father, muttering something Silas couldn't hear. Walter's jaw worked back and forth. You're making a mistake, Walter finally said. A very big mistake. Wouldn't be my first. We'll be back. With the sheriff. With a warrant. And when we are, you'll hang right alongside her. Silas didn't flinch. Looking forward to it. The Holloways turned. 6 horses, 6 riders disappearing into the white expanse of snow and silence. Silas waited until they were gone, really gone, before he let out a breath. He stepped back inside and closed the door. Clara was standing in the middle of the room, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did. They'll kill you now. You know that, right? They'll come back and they'll kill you, and it'll be my fault." "Hey!" Silas crossed to her, stopping just a foot away. "Look at me." She looked up. "They're not going to kill anyone. Not you, not me." His voice was quiet but certain. "We're going to fight this. We're going to find your letter, get you a real trial, and make them answer for what they did." How can we possibly—" "I don't know yet." He almost smiled. "But we'll figure it out." Clara stared at him. This stranger who had pulled her from the snow, who had faced down 6 armed men for her who was standing here now like he actually believed they could win. "Why?" Her voice broke. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Silas was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone should have done it for me once," he said finally. "And nobody did." Clara didn't ask what he meant. She just reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, warm. Neither of them pulled away. The silence after the Holloways left was heavier than the storm. Clara stood at the window watching the snow where their horses had been. Her hand still tingled from Silas's grip. "They'll come back," she said. "I know. With more men, with guns, I know." Silas poured 2 cups of coffee and set one on the table. "Sit down. Drink. You need to warm up from the inside." Clara didn't move. "How can you be so calm?" "Because panic doesn't solve anything." He pulled out a chair. "Sit." She sat. The coffee was bitter, but it was hot, and she wrapped her bandaged hands around the cup like it was the only thing keeping her alive. "Tell me about the letter," Silas said. Clara looked up. "What?" "The letter your husband wrote, the one they took. Tell me exactly what it said." "I already told you." "You told me what they claimed it said. I want to know what you saw, what you read with your own eyes." Clara set down the cup. Her hands were shaking again. "I never saw it." Silas frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean I never saw it. Not once." She met his eyes. Emmett was too weak to write anything at the end. His hands shook so badly he couldn't hold a pen. "I was with him every day, every hour. If he'd written a letter, I would have known." "So they're lying." "They have to be. But Thomas said he found it in Emmett's Bible and—" She stopped. "Wait. What? Emmett's Bible?" Clara's breath caught. "He never let anyone touch it. Not even me. He said his mother gave it to him when he was 12, and it was the only thing he had left of her." "His mother's dead." "She died when he was 15. Margaret is his stepmother." Clara's eyes widened. "Silas, Margaret hated that Bible. She tried to throw it out a dozen times. She said it was a relic of a woman who should be forgotten." Silas leaned forward. "So why would Thomas be looking through it?" "He wouldn't. He never cared about Emmett's things. None of them did." Clara's voice dropped. "Unless they were looking for something specific. Or planting something." The words hung in the air between them. Clara's stomach turned. "You think they forged the letter?" "I think it's possible." Silas stood and walked to the window. "They needed a reason to kill you. Something that would hold up if anyone asked questions. A letter from a dying man accusing his wife that's powerful. But Emmett's handwriting can be copied, especially if you have samples." Silas turned back to her. "Did Margaret have access to anything Emmett wrote? Old letters, documents?" Clara thought back. The farm, the desk in the sitting room, the stack of papers Walter had insisted on keeping after Emmett died. "Yes," she whispered. "She had everything." Silas nodded slowly. "Then we need to find that letter, and we need to prove it's a forgery." "How? They're not going to just hand it over." "No." Silas's jaw tightened. "But they're also not the only ones who can play this game." Clara stared at him. "What are you planning?" I'm planning to visit an old friend. Who? Dr. Marcus Webb. He treated half the territory for 20 years before he retired. If your husband had consumption, Webb would know. And if Webb says it was consumption, that's a medical opinion no jury can ignore. Clara's heart leaped. You think he'll help? I think he owes me a favor. Silas grabbed his coat. Stay here. Keep the door locked. Don't open it for anyone. Wait. Clara stood. You're leaving now. Webb's place is about 4 hours' ride. If I leave now, I can be back before dark. And if the Holloways come back while you're gone. Silas paused. He reached under the table and pulled out a rifle, setting it on the wood with a heavy thunk. You know how to use one of these. Clara's mouth went dry. My father taught me, when I was young. Good. He pushed the rifle toward her. It's loaded. Safety's on the left. Anyone comes through that door who isn't me, you shoot first and ask questions later. Silas, I'll be back. He met her eyes. I promise. Then he was gone. Clara stood alone in the cabin, the rifle cold and heavy in her hands, and wondered if she'd ever see him again. The hours crawled. Clara tried to keep busy. She cleaned the already clean table. She stoked the fire. She checked the window every few minutes, scanning the snow for riders. Nothing. The silence pressed against her ears like cotton. Every creak of the cabin made her jump. Every gust of wind sounded like hoofbeats. She found herself thinking about Emmett. Not the Emmett at the end, the hollow-eyed skeleton who coughed blood and whispered apologies in the dark. The Emmett from before. The one who had smiled at her across the church social, who had brought her wildflowers on their first walk together, who had promised her a life full of love and laughter. Where had that man gone? She knew the answer, of course. The drinking had started 6 months after the wedding. Small at first, a glass of whiskey after dinner, nothing unusual. Then 2 glasses, then 3. Then entire bottles disappearing overnight. She'd tried to talk to him about it. He'd shut her out. She'd tried to get help. He'd forbidden it. And when the coughing started, when the blood came, he'd refused to see a doctor until it was far, far too late. I'm sorry, he'd whispered at the end, his hand paper-thin in hers. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you deserved. Don't talk like that. She'd said, tears streaming down her face. You're going to be fine. We're going to get through this. No. His eyes had been clear for the first time in months. We're not. I'm not. He'd squeezed her hand weakly. But you will. Promise me, Clara. Promise me you'll keep living. Emmett? Promise me. I promise. She'd sobbed. I promise. He'd smiled then, that old smile, the one she'd fallen in love with, and closed his eyes. He never opened them again. Clara wiped her face with the back of her hand. She hadn't cried for Emmett in weeks. She'd thought the tears were all used up. Apparently not. A sound outside. Clara grabbed the rifle and pressed herself against the wall beside the window. Her heart hammered. Her finger found the safety. Hoofbeats, getting closer. She risked a glance through the frost-covered glass. One rider, dark coat, gray horse, Silas. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding and set down the rifle. Her hands were trembling as she unbolted the door. Silas swung down from Ghost and stomped up the porch steps. His face was grim. What happened? Clara asked. Did you find Webb? I found him. And Silas pushed past her into the cabin. He pulled off his gloves and stood by the fire, his back to her. Silas, what happened? Webb's dead. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. What? Died 3 days ago. Silas's voice was flat. His daughter said it was his heart. 3 days. Clara's mind raced. That's the day after Emmett's funeral. I noticed. You think... I don't know what I think. Silas turned to face her. But I know that the one doctor who could have proven your husband died of natural causes is conveniently dead himself. Clara sank into the nearest chair. They killed him. The Holloways killed him. We don't know that. It's too convenient. It's too... She stopped. A new thought struck her. Wait, you said Webb had a daughter. Emily. She lives in town. Did she say anything else about her father's patients? His records? Silas shook his head. She said she burned everything. Webb's orders. He didn't want his patients' private matters falling into the wrong hands. Clara's last hope crumbled. So that's it, she said quietly. We have nothing. Not nothing. Silas reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather journal. Emily gave me this, said her father kept it separate from his medical records. Personal observations, she called it. Thought I might find it useful. Clara's breath caught. What's in it? Silas opened the journal and flipped through the pages. Mostly nothing. Weather observations, crop predictions, complaints about his patients. He stopped. But there's an entry from 2 months ago. What does it say? Silas handed her the journal. Clara's hands shook as she took it. The handwriting was cramped and difficult to read, but she made out the words slowly. September 14th. Visited Holloway Farm at Margaret's request. Examined Emmett B. Classic presentation of consumption. Persistent cough, bloody sputum, night sweats, significant weight loss. Prognosis poor. 6 months at most. Wife Clara present throughout examination. Clearly devoted. Margaret dismissive of diagnosis. Insisted no Holloway dies of common disease. Recommended immediate isolation and rest. Doubt recommendation will be followed. Clara looked up, tears streaming down her face. This proves it, she whispered. This proves he was sick. It proves Webb thought he was sick. That's not quite the same thing. But it's something. It's more than we had before. It's a start. Silas took the journal back. But we need more. We need the letter they claim Emmett wrote. If we can prove it's a forgery... How do we get it? They'll never let us near it. Silas was quiet for a moment. There might be another way. What? Thomas Holloway. Silas's eyes were cold. He's the one who found the letter. And from what I remember, he's not exactly known for his loyalty. What do you mean? I mean he has debts. Gambling debts. Big ones. The kind that make men do desperate things. Silas met her eyes. The kind that might make a man sell out his own family for the right price. Clara stared at him. You want to bribe Thomas? I want to offer him a choice. He can keep lying for his stepmother and hope his debts don't catch up with him. Or he can tell the truth and walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else. And if he refuses, then we find another way. Silas's jaw tightened. But I don't think he'll refuse. Thomas is a coward, always has been, and cowards always take the easy way out. Clara wasn't sure if she should feel hopeful or terrified. Both, she decided. Definitely both. The next morning, Silas rode to town alone. Clara wanted to go with him, but he'd refused. You show your face in town, the Holloways will know within an hour. They've got eyes everywhere. We can't risk it. So she waited. Again. The hours dragged even slower this time. Clara paced the cabin until she thought she'd wear a groove in the floorboards. She read Webb's journal 3 more times, memorizing every word. She cleaned the rifle, checked the ammunition, cleaned it again. And she thought about Silas. Who was he really? A rancher who kept to himself, he'd said. But there was more to it than that. The scar on his face. The way he'd said someone should have done it for me once. The 7 years of solitude. What had happened to him? She found herself wanting to know, not just out of curiosity, but out of something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. The door opened. Clara grabbed the rifle, then lowered it when she saw Silas's face. What happened? Silas stepped inside and closed the door behind him. His expression was unreadable. I found Thomas. And he wouldn't talk to me, not at first. Silas pulled off his coat. So I followed him to the saloon, waited until he'd had a few drinks. Then I made him an offer. What did he say? He laughed in my face. Silas sat down heavily. Said I was a fool if I thought he'd betray his family for money. Clara's heart sank. So it didn't work. I didn't say that. A ghost of a smile crossed Silas's face. See, Thomas may be a coward, but he's also a drunk. And drunks talk, especially when they think no one important is listening. What did he say? He said the letter was Margaret's idea. She dictated it word for word, made him copy it in a hand that looked like Emmett's. Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard. He admitted it. He was bragging about it. Thought it was clever. Silas's expression darkened. He also said something else. What? He said Margaret's planning to file charges against you tomorrow. Murder. She's got the sheriff in her pocket and she's confident he'll issue a warrant. Tomorrow. Clara's voice cracked. But we don't have enough evidence. We have Webb's journal. We have Thomas's confession, even if he won't repeat it in court. Silas leaned forward. And we have something else. What? A witness. Clara blinked. Who? A woman named Sarah Cooper. She was Webb's nurse for 15 years. She was there when he examined Emmett. Silas met her eyes. And she's willing to testify. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She lives about 20 miles north, Silas continued. Remote farm. The Holloways don't know about her. Webb kept her off his official records because she's a Negro. Didn't want to cause trouble for her. And she'll help us. She said Webb was the only white man who ever treated her like a human being. If testifying against the Holloways honors his memory, she'll do it gladly. Clara burst into tears. Silas looked alarmed. What did I say something wrong? No. She laughed through her tears. No, you said something right. For the first time in weeks, you said something right. She crossed the room and threw her arms around him. Silas went rigid. For a moment, Clara thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then slowly, his arms came up around her. They stood like that for a long moment, neither of them speaking. Thank you, Clara whispered against his chest. Thank you for not giving up on me. I wouldn't know how. His voice was rough. Giving up isn't something I do. She pulled back and looked up at him. His gray eyes were soft now, uncertain. Silas? She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Depends on what it is. The scar. She touched her own face, mirroring its path. How did you get it? His expression closed. That's a long story. We have time. Not enough. He stepped back, breaking the contact between them. We need to ride to Sarah's place tomorrow, first light. If we can get her testimony before the sheriff issues his warrant. Silas. He stopped. You know everything about me, Clara said quietly. Every shameful secret, every failure. I cried in front of you. I begged. I showed you the worst parts of who I am. She took a breath. Don't I deserve to know something about you? The silence stretched between them. Silas walked to the window. His back was to her, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. I was married once, he said. Clara went still. Her name was Abigail. We met in Missouri before the war. She was the daughter of a shopkeeper. Beautiful, kind. Too good for a man like me. He paused. We had a son, William. Named him after my father. What happened to them? Silas didn't answer for a long moment. The war happened. I enlisted with the Union, thought I was doing the right thing. His voice was hollow. I was gone for 3 years. When I came back. He stopped. Silas. Typhoid fever. The words came out flat dead. Swept through the county while I was gone. took half the town, including... His voice broke. Including them. Clara's hand went to her mouth. I found their graves in the church cemetery, side by side. Someone had planted flowers. I never found out who. Silas finally turned. His eyes were red but dry. I should have been there. I should have protected them. Instead, I was 1,000 miles away fighting a war that didn't matter while they died alone. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. His voice was sharp. Everything that happened after was my fault. The drinking, the fighting, the years I spent trying to destroy myself because I couldn't face what I'd lost. He touched his scar. I got this in a bar fight in Kansas City. Man twice my size. I didn't even try to defend myself. Part of me was hoping he'd finish the job. But he didn't. No, he didn't. Silas dropped his hand. I woke up in an alley with my face split open and blood everywhere, and I realized something. Dying wasn't going to bring them back. Nothing was going to bring them back. So I had a choice. I could keep destroying myself, or I could try to build something worth living for. The ranch, Clara said softly. The ranch. He nodded. I bought this land with the last of my savings, built the cabin with my own hands, spent 7 years trying to convince myself that it was enough. Was it? Silas looked at her. Really looked at her. No, he said. It wasn't. The air between them changed, charged. Clara stepped toward him. Her heart was pounding. Silas? A sound outside. They both froze. What was that? Clara whispered. Silas grabbed the rifle and moved to the window. His face went pale. Riders, at least 10. The Holloways. Worse. He turned to her, his expression grim. It's the sheriff. Clara's blood ran cold. They issued the warrant early. They must have found out about my trip to town. He grabbed his coat. You need to hide. Hide where? There's a root cellar under the cabin. Hatch is under the rug by the stove. He thrust the rifle into her hands. Get in there, and don't come out no matter what you hear. Silas, I can't let you. Listen to me. He grabbed her shoulders. If they take you now before we get Sarah's testimony, you're dead. You understand they'll hang you before sundown. And what about you? I'll stall them, buy you time. They'll arrest you too. Maybe? His grip tightened. But at least you'll be alive. That's all that matters. No. Clara shook her head. No, I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. It's not your choice. His voice softened. I've spent 10 years looking for something worth dying for, Clara. Let me have this. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'll come back, he said. I promise. You can't promise that. I can. And I am. He pressed his forehead to hers. Now go. Please. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but the hoofbeats were getting louder and there was no time. She kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but it was enough. Come back to me, she whispered. Then she ran to the hatch and disappeared into the darkness below. Silas watched the hatch close. He waited until he heard the bolt slide home, then straightened his coat and walked to the door. 10 riders were pulling up outside. Sheriff Dawson at the front, badge gleaming. Behind him, Walter Holloway sat on his horse with a smile that made Silas want to put a bullet between his eyes. Silas opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Morning, Sheriff. Dawson tipped his hat. Garrett, I'm going to need you to step aside. On what grounds? I have a warrant for the arrest of Clara Brennan. Murder in the first degree. That so? Silas crossed his arms. Got any evidence? Got a letter from the victim himself. Got testimony from his family. Dawson's eyes were cold. And got reason to believe you've been harboring a fugitive. She's not here. Walter Holloway laughed. Don't insult our intelligence, Garrett. We know she's in there. Then search the place. Silas stepped aside. Go ahead. Tear it apart. You won't find her. Dawson hesitated. He glanced at Walter, then back at Silas. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Am I? Silas smiled. Or am I making it exactly as hard as it should be? Dawson dismounted. He walked up the porch steps slowly, deliberately. I'm going to give you one chance, Garrett. One chance to tell me where she is. After that, things get complicated. Silas met his eyes. They've been complicated since the day I found her tied to that fence. Dawson's jaw tightened. He nodded to his men. Search the cabin. The deputies tore through the cabin like wolves. Clara pressed herself against the cold dirt wall of the root cellar, one hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her breathing. Above her head, boots stomped across the floorboards. Furniture crashed, glass shattered. Check under the bed. Nothing here. The chest, open it. Clara's heart pounded so hard she was certain they could hear it through the floor. Her eyes had adjusted to the darkness, and she could see the outline of the hatch above her, the thin line of light seeping through the edges. If they moved the rug, if they looked closely, she's not here. Sheriff Dawson's voice muffled but clear. Garrett, where is she? I told you. Silas's voice was calm, steady. She's not here. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. She left yesterday. Said she was heading north. A pause. Then Walter Holloway's voice dripping with contempt. He's protecting her, obviously. Arrest him. On what charge? Silas asked. Harboring a fugitive. Obstruction of justice. Take your pick. You can't prove any of that. I don't need to prove it. Walter's voice grew closer. Clara could picture him standing right above her boots, inches from the hidden hatch. I just need to make your life difficult enough that you give her up. Then you'll be waiting a long time. The sound of a fist connecting with flesh. A grunt. A body hitting the floor. Clara bit down on her knuckle to keep from screaming. That's enough. Dawson's voice was sharp. Walter, I said that's enough. He's lying. Maybe he is, but I'm not going to beat a confession out of him in his own home. Dawson's boots moved across the floor. Garrett, I'm taking you in for questioning. You can either come willingly or my men can drag you. Your choice. A long pause. Fine. Silas's voice was thick like he was talking through blood. But you're making a mistake. Maybe. Let's go. The boots moved toward the door. More footsteps followed. Then the door slammed and silence fell over the cabin like a shroud. Clara didn't move. She counted to 100, then 200, then 500. Only when she was certain they were gone did she push open the hatch and climb out. The cabin was destroyed. The table was overturned. The chairs were smashed. Silas's mother's medicine chest had been thrown against the wall, its contents scattered across the floor. And on the wooden boards near the door, a small pool of blood. Clara's hands shook as she knelt beside it. I'll find you, she whispered. I'll get you out of this. But first, she needed Sarah Cooper. Clara rode through the night. Ghost was exhausted, but Clara pushed her anyway. Every minute counted. Every second that Silas spent in that jail cell was a second the Holloways could use to tighten their grip. The sun was rising when she finally spotted the small farmhouse in the distance. Smoke curled from the chimney. A good sign. Someone was home. Clara dismounted and approached the door on shaking legs. She knocked 3 times. Silence. She knocked again. Mrs. Cooper, my name is Clara Brennan. Silas Garrett sent me. Please, I need your help. More silence. Then a voice from behind her. Don't move. Clara froze. She could feel the barrel of a shotgun pressed between her shoulder blades. Turn around. Slowly. Clara turned. The woman holding the gun was older than Clara had expected, 60 at least, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. You're Clara Brennan. Yes, ma'am. The one they say killed her husband. Clara's throat tightened. I didn't kill him. That's what they all say. Mrs. Cooper, please. Silas told me you were there when Dr. Webb examined Emmett. You know the truth. You know it was consumption. The shotgun didn't waver. I know a lot of things. Doesn't mean I'm going to stick my neck out for some white woman I've never met. I understand. But Silas is in jail because of me. The Holloways are going to hang me for something I didn't do, and then they're going to make sure he hangs too. Clara's voice broke. Please. You're our only hope. Sarah Cooper studied her for a long moment. How do I know this isn't a trap? A trap. The Holloways have tried before. Sent people to my door with sob stories, hoping I'd say something they could use against me. Her eyes narrowed. Why should I believe you're any different? Clara didn't know what to say. She had nothing to offer, no proof, no guarantees, nothing but the desperation in her voice. Because I'm going to die, she said finally. And I'd rather die telling the truth than live with a lie. The shotgun lowered. Sarah Cooper's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Come inside, she said. We have a lot to discuss. Sarah's kitchen was small but warm. Clara sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. Sarah sat across from her, the shotgun within easy reach. Tell me everything, Sarah said. From the beginning. So Clara did. She told her about Emmett, the good years and the bad, the drinking, the anger, the slow decline. She told her about the consumption, about nursing him through endless nights of coughing and blood and fever. She told her about his death, about the Holloway's accusations about being tied to the fence post and left to freeze. And she told her about Silas. When she finished, Sarah was quiet for a long time. Dr. Webb was a good man, she finally said. Best man I ever worked for. Treated me like an equal, which is more than most white folks ever did. She paused. He knew the truth about your husband. I was there when he made the diagnosis. Consumption plain as day. No question about it. Then you'll testify. I didn't say that. Clara's heart sank. But... Let me finish. Sarah held up a hand. I said I was there. I said Webb knew the truth. But that was before Margaret Holloway came to see him. Clara went cold. Margaret visited him 3 days before he died. Came alone, which was unusual. Normally, she sent her husband or one of her sons to do her dirty work. Sarah's jaw tightened. She was in his office for almost an hour. When she left, Webb looked like he'd seen a ghost. What did she say to him? He wouldn't tell me. Just said he needed to burn some records. Said it was for the best. Sarah met Clara's eyes. 2 days later, he had a heart attack. Died in his sleep. Clara couldn't breathe. You think she... I don't think anything. I know. Sarah's voice was hard. Margaret Holloway poisoned Dr. Webb. She did it to bury the truth about your husband, and she did it without a second thought. How can you be sure? Because I know what a man looks like when he's been poisoned. I've seen it before. Sarah stood and walked to the window. And because the night before he died, Webb gave me something. Said if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe. Clara's pulse quickened. What did he give you? Sarah reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. His diagnosis, in his own handwriting. She handed it to Clara. Emmett Brennan. Consumption. Terminal. Witnessed by Sarah Cooper. She paused. He signed it too. And he made me countersign as witness. Clara unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The words swam before her eyes. This proves it, she breathed. This proves everything. It proves your husband was sick. It doesn't prove Margaret killed Webb, and it doesn't prove the letter is a forgery. But it's enough to create doubt, enough to make a jury think twice. Maybe. Sarah took the paper back. But you're forgetting something. What? The Holloways own the judge. They own the sheriff. They own half the jury pool in this territory. Sarah's eyes were grim. You think a piece of paper is going to stop them? Clara's hope began to crumble. Then what do we do? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled a thin, dangerous smile that transformed her face. We don't play their game, she said. We change the rules. They rode into town together. Clara had argued against it, had insisted Sarah stay hidden until the trial, but Sarah had refused. I've been hiding for 60 years, she'd said. I'm too old and too tired to hide anymore. So they rode side by side through the main street, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the fingers pointed in their direction. Sarah sat tall in her saddle, her chin high, her eyes fixed straight ahead. Clara tried to match her courage. They stopped in front of the jailhouse. Clara dismounted first, her legs unsteady beneath her. Are you sure about this? She asked. I'm sure. Sarah climbed down and straightened her dress. Let's go get your man. They pushed through the door. Sheriff Dawson was sitting at his desk, a cup of coffee in one hand and a newspaper in the other. He looked up when they entered, and his face went pale. Mrs. Brennan, you're supposed to be under arrest. I know. Clara walked toward him, her heart pounding. I'm here to turn myself in. Dawson set down his coffee. His hand moved toward his gun. Don't. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a knife. You draw that weapon, and every person in this town will know how you helped Margaret Holloway murder Dr. Webb. Dawson froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Sarah pulled out the diagnosis and slapped it on his desk. This is Webb's handwriting, his signature, his official medical opinion that Emmett Brennan died of consumption, not poison. And I have a witness statement that Margaret Holloway visited him 2 days before his death and threatened to destroy his practice if he didn't change his records. That's not... It's the truth. Clara stepped forward. And if you don't release Silas Garrett right now, we're going to take this evidence straight to the territorial governor. Let him decide who's been obstructing justice. Dawson's face went from pale to red. His jaw worked back and forth. You're bluffing. Try me. The silence stretched. Clara could hear her own heartbeat loud and fast in the quiet room. Finally, Dawson stood. You're making a mistake, he said. Both of you. Maybe. Clara didn't blink. But at least it's our mistake to make. Dawson reached for his keys. Silas looked like hell. His left eye was swollen shut. His lip was split. Dried blood crusted the side of his face. But when he saw Clara standing outside his cell, he smiled. Took you long enough? Clara laughed through her tears. I got a little sidetracked. The cell door swung open. Silas stepped out, wincing with every movement. Sarah Cooper, I presume? He nodded to the older woman. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Sarah's expression was grim. We may have gotten you out of jail, but the Holloways aren't going to take this lying down. I know. They'll push for a trial. Fast. Before we can build a proper defense. I know that too. Clara touched his arm. Silas, your face. It looks worse than it feels. He covered her hand with his. I'm okay. Really. You're not okay. You're alive. His good eye met hers. Thanks to you. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being reckless stupid, that he couldn't keep sacrificing himself for her. Instead, she kissed him. It was longer this time, deeper. When they finally broke apart, Sarah was looking pointedly at the ceiling. If you two are finished, she said dryly, we have a trial to prepare for. The trial came 3 days later. Clara stood in the courtroom, her hands clasped in front of her, watching the gallery fill with faces she didn't recognize. Some looked curious, some looked hostile. A few, very few, looked sympathetic. Silas sat in the front row, his injuries healing but still visible. Sarah sat beside him, her back straight, her expression unreadable. The Holloways sat on the opposite side. Walter, Thomas. and Margaret, dressed all in black, looking every inch the grieving mother. Clara wanted to scream at her, wanted to tear across the room and wrap her hands around that elegant throat. Instead, she stood quietly and waited for the judge. Judge Harrison was a large man with a gray beard and small, cold eyes. He took his seat without acknowledging anyone in the room, shuffled some papers, and cleared his throat. This court is now in session. The territory of Wyoming versus Clara Brennan on the charge of murder in the first degree. He looked at Clara. "How do you plead?" Clara's voice was steady. "Not guilty, Your Honor." A murmur ran through the crowd. Judge Harrison silenced it with a look. "The prosecution may make its opening statement." A thin man in a black suit rose from the Holloway's side. Clara recognized him, Charles Porter, their family lawyer. He'd been at Emmett's funeral offering condolences that had felt hollow even then. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Porter's voice was smooth practiced. "We are here today because a woman betrayed her sacred vows. Clara Brennan married into one of the most respected families in this territory. She was welcomed with open arms, given every comfort, every opportunity. And how did she repay that kindness?" He paused dramatically. "By poisoning her husband in cold blood." Clara's nails dug into her palms. "The evidence is clear," Porter continued. "Emmett Brennan was a healthy, vibrant young man before his marriage. Within months of the wedding, he began to decline. Weakness, fatigue, mysterious ailments that no doctor could explain." He glanced at Clara. "Or so we were told." In the days before his death, Emmett Brennan wrote a letter confessing his fears, his suspicions, a letter naming his wife as the source of his suffering. Porter held up a folded piece of paper. "This letter, found in his personal Bible, is proof of Clara Brennan's guilt, and we will ask this jury to deliver the justice that Emmett Brennan deserves." He sat down. The courtroom buzzed. Judge Harrison turned to Clara. "Does the defendant have representation?" Clara opened her mouth. "She does, Your Honor." Everyone turned. Silas was standing, his bruised face set with determination. "And who are you?" Judge Harrison asked. "Silas Garrett. I'll be representing Mrs. Brennan." Porter laughed. "A cattle rancher, Your Honor. This is absurd." "I have the right to choose my own counsel." Clara found her voice. "And I choose Mr. Garrett." Judge Harrison looked between them. His eyes lingered on Silas's injuries. "Very well. Mr. Garrett, your opening statement." Silas walked to the front of the courtroom. He moved slowly, deliberately, letting everyone see the damage that had been done to him. "Your Honor, members of the jury." His voice was calm, but it carried. "You've just heard a very compelling story. A loving family, a devoted husband, a murderous wife." He paused. "There's just one problem. It's not true." The murmur grew louder. Silas ignored it. Emmett Brennan was not poisoned. He died of consumption, a disease that had been eating away at his lungs for months before his death. We have medical evidence to prove it. We have witness testimony to support it. And we have reason to believe that the letter Mr. Porter just showed you is a forgery created by the Holloway family to frame an innocent woman. Objection. Porter was on his feet. "This is slander." "Sit down, Mr. Porter." Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. "You'll have your chance to respond. Continue, Mr. Garrett." Silas nodded. "I'm not going to stand here and tell you that Clara Brennan is perfect. She's not. No one is. But she is innocent of the crime she's been accused of. And by the time this trial is over, I intend to prove it." He returned to his seat. Clara reached out and squeezed his hand. "We're going to win this," he whispered. Clara wished she could believe him. The prosecution called its first witness. Thomas Holloway walked to the stand with a swagger that made Clara's skin crawl. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down with a smirk. "Mr. Holloway," Porter began, "can you tell the court about your relationship with your brother? Emmett and I were close. Real close. Grew up together, worked the ranch together. He was my best friend." "And what did you observe about his health in the months before his death?" Thomas's expression shifted to something resembling grief. Clara knew it was an act. He was getting weaker, losing weight, coughing all the time. We were all worried about him. Did he ever express any concerns about his wife? Objection. Silas stood, leading the witness. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Porter. Porter nodded. Did your brother ever confide in you about his marriage? Thomas hesitated. He said things were difficult, that Clara wasn't who he thought she was. What did he mean by that? He didn't say exactly, but he was scared. I could see it in his eyes. Thomas looked at the jury. And then I found the letter. Tell us about that. It was after the funeral. I was going through his things trying to find something to remember him by. I opened his Bible, and there it was, folded up between the pages. They did. And what did the letter say? Thomas's voice dropped. It said he was afraid of what Clara was doing to him, afraid she was poisoning him, but he couldn't prove it. He paused dramatically. It said if anything happened to him, we should look at her. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. Order, order in this court. Clara's heart was racing. She looked at Silas. His face was stone. Your witness, Mr. Garrett, Judge Harrison said. Silas stood slowly. He walked toward the witness stand, his eyes never leaving Thomas's face. Mr. Holloway, you say you found this letter in your brother's Bible. That's right. The same Bible your stepmother tried to throw away multiple times. Thomas blinked. The same Bible that Emmett kept locked in a chest by his bed because he didn't trust anyone else to touch it. I don't know what you're... How did you get into that chest? Mr. Holloway. Silence. The chest was locked. Silas continued. Clara told me Emmett never let anyone near it. So how did you open it? Thomas's face reddened. He must have... The lock was broken. After he died. Broken or opened with a key? I don't remember. You don't remember. Silas turned to the jury. A man finds a letter that accuses his sister-in-law of murder, and he doesn't remember how he got into the chest that contained it. Objection. Porter stood. Mr. Garrett is badgering the witness. I'm asking a simple question. Silas turned back to Thomas. Let me try another one. Do you have gambling debts, Mr. Holloway? Thomas went pale. That's not relevant. Answer the question. I don't see what that has to do with... Your Honor, please direct the witness to answer. Judge Harrison nodded. Answer the question, Mr. Holloway. Thomas swallowed. I've had some financial difficulties, but that's not... How much do you owe? I don't know exactly, roughly. Thomas was sweating now. Maybe $2,000. A gasp from the gallery. $2,000 was more than most men made in 5 years. $2,000. Silas let the number hang in the air. And who holds those debts? Various people, including a man named Jack Rourke, a known loan shark who operates out of Kansas City. Thomas's face crumbled. How do you... Answer the question. Yes, Rourke holds some of my debts, but that doesn't mean... It means you're desperate. Silas stepped closer. It means you'd do almost anything for money, including forging a letter to frame an innocent woman for murder. I didn't forge anything. Then explain something to me. Silas pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. This is a sample of your handwriting. I obtained it from a merchant in town who had one of your IOUs. He held it up next to the letter. Would you like to tell the jury why the loops on your Ys are identical to the ones in this so-called letter from your brother? The courtroom exploded. Thomas was on his feet shouting denials that no one could hear over the chaos. Porter was objecting. Judge Harrison was banging his gavel. And Clara sat frozen, watching the case against her crumble before her eyes. Order? Judge Harrison's voice finally cut through the noise. I will have order in this courtroom. The room slowly quieted. Mr. Garrett, the judge said, You're making some serious accusations. I am, Your Honor, and I have evidence to support them. Silas turned to the gallery. I'd like to call Sarah Cooper to the stand. Margaret Holloway's face went white. Sarah walked to the witness stand with the dignity of a queen. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore her oath, and sat down without looking at any of the Holloways. Mrs. Cooper, Silas began. What was your profession before you retired? I was a nurse, worked with Dr. Marcus Webb for 15 years. And were you present when Dr. Webb examined Emmett Brennan? I was. What was his diagnosis? Sarah's voice was clear and strong. Consumption. Advanced stage. Dr. Webb estimated he had 6 months to live at most. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Did he document this diagnosis? He did. Sarah reached into her pocket and produced the paper she'd shown Clara. This is his official record, signed by Dr. Webb and witnessed by me. Porter leaped to his feet. Your Honor, this document has not been authenticated. It's in Webb's handwriting, Silas cut in. I have samples from his other patients to compare. The jury can decide for themselves. Judge Harrison examined the paper, his brow furrowed. This appears genuine, he admitted. I'll allow it. Clara's heart soared, but Sarah wasn't finished. There's something else, she said. Something the jury needs to know. Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. Go on. Sarah looked directly at Margaret Holloway. 3 days before Dr. Webb died, Margaret Holloway came to his office. She threatened him. Said if he didn't change his records, she'd destroy his practice, his reputation, everything he'd built. Sarah's voice hardened. 2 days later, he was dead. The courtroom went silent. Margaret Holloway rose slowly from her seat. Her face was a mask of fury. This woman is lying, she said, her voice cutting through the stillness. She's a Negro servant with a grudge against respectable people. Her testimony is worthless. Mrs. Holloway. Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. You will sit down and remain silent, or I will have you removed. You can't remove me. I'm the victim here. My son is dead because of that woman. She pointed at Clara. And you're letting her walk free. Sit down. I will not. I refuse to. Bailiff. 2 men grabbed Margaret's arms. She struggled, screaming accusations, but they dragged her toward the door. This isn't over, she shrieked. Do you hear me? This isn't over. The door slammed behind her. And in the silence that followed, Clara finally allowed herself to hope. Judge Harrison called a recess. Clara sat in the small room behind the courtroom, her hands shaking. Silas sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. It's working, she whispered. It's actually working. We're not done yet. Silas's voice was cautious. The jury still has to deliberate. But after everything they heard, juries are unpredictable, especially when powerful families are involved. Clara looked at him. You think we might still lose? Silas was quiet for a moment. I think we've done everything we can, he finally said. The rest is out of our hands. I hate that. I know. He took her hand. But whatever happens, I want you to know something. What? I don't regret any of it. His eyes met hers. Finding you in that storm. Taking you in. Standing up to the Holloways. He paused. Falling in love with you. Clara's breath caught. Silas. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. She didn't say anything. Instead, she kissed him. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Clara spent every minute of it pacing the small room, wearing a path in the wooden floor. Silas tried to get her to sit, to eat, to rest. She couldn't do any of it. Finally, the bailiff came to the door. They've reached a verdict. Clara's legs nearly gave out. Silas caught her arm, steadied her. Together, he said. They walked into the courtroom. The gallery was packed. Every seat was full, and people were standing along the walls. Clara could feel their eyes on her, hundreds of them watching, waiting. She took her place at the defendant's table. Silas stood beside her. Judge Harrison entered. Everyone rose, then sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a weathered rancher Clara didn't recognize, stood. We have your honor. And what say you? The foreman looked at Clara. His expression gave nothing away. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant. Clara stopped breathing. Not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Clara's knees buckled. Silas caught her, held her upright as chaos swirled around them. People were shouting, crying, arguing. Somewhere behind her, Walter Holloway was screaming about injustice. But Clara heard none of it. She turned to Silas, tears streaming down her face. We did it, she breathed. We actually did it. Silas smiled a real smile, the first one she'd ever seen from him. No, he said. You did it. And there in the middle of the courtroom, surrounded by strangers and enemies, and one unlikely ally, Clara Brennan finally let herself believe that she might actually survive this. But even as she clung to Silas, even as the reality of her freedom washed over her, she couldn't shake the memory of Margaret Holloway's face as they'd dragged her from the room. This isn't over, Margaret had screamed. Clara believed her. The verdict changed nothing in town. Clara walked down the main street 2 days after the trial, and people crossed to the other side to avoid her. Mothers pulled their children close. Shopkeepers suddenly found themselves too busy to serve her. Murderer, someone hissed as she passed. Clara kept walking. Her jaw was tight, her eyes forward. They'll come around, Silas had said that morning. Give them time. But Clara wasn't so sure. She stopped at the general store. The door was open, but when she stepped inside, the owner, a thin man named Patterson, immediately blocked her path. We're closed. The sign says open. Sign's wrong. His eyes were cold. We don't serve your kind here. My kind. Killers. Clara's hands clenched. I was acquitted. The jury? The jury was fooled. Everyone knows what you did. Patterson stepped closer, lowering his voice. Margaret Holloway is a respected woman in this community. You think people are going to take your word over hers? The evidence. Evidence can be bought. Witnesses can be paid. He spat at her feet. Get out of my store. Clara stared at him for a long moment. Her heart was pounding, but she refused to let him see her shake. Fine, she said quietly. But remember this moment, Mr. Patterson. Remember how you treated an innocent woman. Because one day you're going to need help. And I hope whoever you ask treats you better than you've treated me. She turned and walked out. She made it 3 blocks before the tears came. Silas found her sitting on a fence post at the edge of town, her face buried in her hands. He didn't say anything, just sat down beside her and waited. They hate me, Clara finally said. All of them. They think I'm a monster. Not all of them. Enough of them. She looked up, her eyes red. I can't live like this, Silas. I can't spend the rest of my life being treated like a criminal. So don't. Don't what? Don't spend your life here. He met her eyes. Come back to the ranch with me. Clara blinked. The ranch? You need a place to stay. I have room. He paused. And I could use the company. Silas, I can't just... Why not? Because people will talk. They'll say... They're already talking. His voice was gentle. They've been talking since the day I pulled you off that fence. Nothing you do is going to change that. Clara was quiet for a moment. What would I even do out there? Whatever you want. Silas shrugged. Read, rest, figure out your next move. He hesitated. Or you could help people. Help people how? You're a nurse, aren't you? You said you trained back east before you married Emmett. I did, but... There's no doctor within 40 miles of here. Not since Webb died. People get sick, they either ride all day to find help, or they suffer alone. He looked at her. You could change that. Clara stared at him. You want me to open a clinic? I want you to do something that matters, something that reminds you who you are. His eyes were intense. You're not a murderer, Clara. You're a healer. Don't let them take that away from you. Clara didn't know what to say. She'd spent so long fighting for her life, fighting to prove her innocence. She hadn't thought about what came after, what she would do with her freedom if she ever got it. I don't have any supplies, she said slowly. No medicine, no equipment. Webb's daughter might still have some of his things. Sarah could ask. And where would I work? The townspeople would never let me. There's an old barn on the back of my property. Needs some repairs, but the bones are solid. Silas almost smiled. I could have it fixed up in a week. Clara's heart was racing now, not with fear, but with something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why do you keep helping me? Silas was quiet for a long moment. Because you deserve it, he said finally. And because I don't want you to leave. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, something unspoken, something fragile. Clara looked away first. Okay, she said softly. Let's build a clinic. The barn took 2 weeks to transform. Silas worked from dawn until dusk, hammering boards, patching holes, building shelves. Clara worked beside him when she could, but her injured hands were still healing, and he insisted she rest more than she wanted. You're no good to anyone if you collapse, he told her. I'm fine. You're stubborn. Same thing. Despite herself, Clara smiled. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings were for work. Afternoons were for planning. Evenings were for quiet, sitting by the fire, reading, talking about nothing and everything. Clara learned that Silas hated coffee, but drank it anyway because it reminded him of his father. She learned that he'd taught himself to read from a Bible his mother had left behind. She learned that he still had nightmares about the war, about Abigail and William, about all the things he couldn't save. And Silas learned about her. He learned about her childhood in Pennsylvania, about the fever that took her mother, about the father who'd taught her to shoot and ride, and never take no for an answer. He learned about her training at a hospital in Philadelphia, about the patients she'd saved and the ones she'd lost. He learned about Emmett, the good and the bad, the love and the pain. They didn't talk about the future. They didn't talk about what they were becoming to each other. Some things didn't need words. The first patient arrived on a Tuesday. Clara was organizing her meager supplies. Bandages, herbs, a few bottles of medicine Sarah had salvaged from Webb's things when she heard footsteps outside. She looked up. A woman stood in the doorway, clutching a small bundle to her chest. Her clothes were worn, her face weathered. Her skin was darker than Sarah's, and her eyes held the kind of fear Clara recognized all too well. Please, the woman said. Her accent was thick, unfamiliar. My baby. He's sick, very sick. Clara crossed the room immediately. Let me see him. The woman hesitated. You help us. Even though you, what? We are nobody. The woman's voice cracked. Nobody help us. Clara's heart twisted. She reached out and gently took the bundle from the woman's arms. The baby was tiny, maybe 6 months old, with a face flushed red from fever. His breathing was shallow, labored. How long has he been like this? 3 days. I try everything. Nothing work. Clara carried the baby to her makeshift examination table. She checked his temperature, listened to his chest, examined his throat. It's croup, she said. The air passages are inflamed. That's why he's having trouble breathing. Croup is bad. It can be, but if we act fast, he should be okay. Clara looked at the woman. What's your name? Maria. Maria Santos. Maria, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Maria nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, yes, I trust you. Clara worked through the night. She boiled water for steam, created a tent over the baby's face to help him breathe. She made a poultice from herbs Sarah had taught her about, applied it to his tiny chest. She held him upright when the coughing fits came, soothed him when he cried. Maria stayed by her side the whole time, watching, praying, holding Clara's hand when the fear became too much. And somewhere around midnight, the baby's fever broke. "He okay?" Maria whispered, afraid to hope. "He going to live?" Clara smiled, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. "He's going to be fine." Maria burst into tears. She grabbed Clara's hands and kissed them, sobbing words in a language Clara didn't understand, but felt in her bones. "Thank you," Maria finally managed in English. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." Maria's eyes shone. "Nobody else help us. We go to town, they say no. They say we dirty. They say we not deserve doctor." She gripped Clara's hands tighter. "But you help. You save my baby." Clara's throat tightened. "Everyone deserves help, Maria. Everyone." Maria left at dawn, her baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. But before she went, she made Clara a promise. "I tell everyone," she said. "I tell all my people. The lady at the ranch, she help. She good. She care about us." Clara watched her go, something warm spreading through her chest. Maybe this was who she was supposed to be. Maybe this was what all the pain had been for. Maybe. Word spread faster than Clara expected. Within a week, more patients started arriving. A farmer with a broken arm. A pregnant woman worried about her baby. An elderly man with a cough that wouldn't go away. Most of them were like Maria, people the town had rejected. Immigrants, natives, the poor and the forgotten. Clara treated them all. She didn't ask for payment, she didn't ask questions, she just helped. And slowly something began to change. The people she treated started bringing things. Food, blankets, firewood. Small tokens of gratitude that meant more than money ever could. "You're building something," Silas said one evening, watching her organize her growing supply of medicines. "I'm just doing my job." "It's more than that." He moved closer. "You're giving them hope. People who've never had anyone fight for them before. You're showing them they matter." Clara looked at him. "So are you." "Me? You took me in when everyone else wanted me dead. You stood up to the Holloways. You fought for me in court." She set down the bottle she was holding. "You've given me more hope than I've had in years." Silas didn't respond. His jaw tightened and he looked away. Clara frowned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Silas, I said it's nothing." He turned toward the door. "I should check on the horses." "Silas, wait." But he was already gone. Clara stood alone, confused and hurt. What had she said wrong? The distance grew. Over the next few days, Silas pulled back. He still helped with the clinic, still shared meals with Clara, still sat by the fire in the evenings. But something had changed. A wall had gone up between them, invisible but unmistakable. Clara tried to talk to him. He deflected. She tried to reach him. He retreated. Finally, she'd had enough. "What is going on with you?" she demanded one night. Silas was sitting at the table carving something from a piece of wood. He didn't look up. "Nothing. Don't lie to me." Clara crossed the room and stood in front of him. "Something's been wrong for days. You barely look at me anymore. You barely talk to me. What did I do?" "You didn't do anything? Then why are you acting like this?" The knife stilled in his hands. He set it down slowly. "Because I'm scared," he said. Clara blinked. "Scared of what?" Silas finally looked at her. His gray eyes were haunted. "Of losing you." Clara's breath caught. Silas, everyone I've ever loved, I've lost. His voice was raw. My parents, Abigail, William, I buried them all. I stood over their graves and promised myself I'd never let anyone that close again. He stood, putting distance between them. And then you came along. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. His hands clenched at his sides. What if you get sick? What if the Holloways come back? What if something happens and I can't save you? Then you'll grieve, and then you'll keep living. Clara stepped toward him. That's what we do, Silas. That's what being human means. I can't go through that again. So you're going to push me away instead. Her voice rose. You're going to spend the rest of your life alone because you're afraid of getting hurt. Yes. The word exploded out of him. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because the alternative is watching you die, and I can't. His voice broke. Clara closed the distance between them. Look at me, she said softly. He didn't move. Silas, look at me. Slowly he raised his eyes. I spent 3 weeks tied to a fence post left to die by people who were supposed to be my family. Clara's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. You saved my life. You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You showed me that there are still good people in this world. She reached up and touched his face. I'm not asking you for forever. I'm asking you for today. Can you give me that? Silas stared at her. His jaw worked. His eyes glistened. What if today isn't enough? Then we'll figure out tomorrow when it comes. Silence. Then Silas reached up and covered her hand with his. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. I don't know how to love someone without being terrified of losing them. Neither do I. Clara smiled through her tears. But maybe we can learn together. He pulled her into his arms. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other, breathing each other in. No words, no promises, just two broken people finding something whole in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Silas cupped her face in his hands. Stay, he said. I'm not going anywhere. I mean it. Stay here, with me. Not just until you figure out your next move. Forever. Clara's heart stopped. Are you asking me to? I'm asking you to build a life with me. Here, on this ranch. His eyes searched hers. I know it's not much. I know I'm not much. But I love you, Clara. I've loved you since the moment I found you in that storm, half dead and fighting like hell to stay alive. And I don't want to spend another day pretending I don't. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. You don't have to answer now, Silas continued. I know it's a lot. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But she kissed him. It was different from the kisses before. Those had been quick, desperate, stolen in moments of crisis. This one was slow, deep, deliberate. A promise sealed without words. When they broke apart, Silas was smiling. Was that a yes? That was a yes. The next morning, Clara woke to find Silas already gone. A note was on the table. Went to town for supplies. Be back before noon. Don't work too hard. Clara smiled and set about her morning routine. She checked on her patients. A young boy with a sprained ankle was recovering nicely in the corner and organized her supplies for the day ahead. Around mid-morning, she heard footsteps outside. Silas? She looked up. You're back early. The words died in her throat. Thomas Holloway stood in the doorway. Clara's blood ran cold. Get out. Easy. Thomas raised his hands. I'm not here to cause trouble. Then why are you here? To warn you. He stepped inside, his eyes darting nervously. My stepmother's planning something bad. Clara didn't move. Why would you tell me that? Because, Thomas swallowed. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of covering for her. I'm tired of being afraid. You should be afraid, after what you did at the trial. I know what I did. His voice cracked. I know I'm a coward. I've always been a coward. But I don't want to be anymore. Clara studied him. The arrogant swagger was gone. The smirk had vanished. He looked small, desperate, broken. What is she planning? Clara asked. I don't know exactly, but I heard her talking to some men last night. Men I didn't recognize. She mentioned the clinic. Thomas met her eyes. She mentioned burning it down. Clara's stomach dropped. Burning it? With you inside. The room tilted. When? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know for sure. Thomas moved toward her. You have to leave. Take Garrett and go. Get as far away as you can. I can't just leave. The patients... If you stay, you'll die. Thomas grabbed her arm. Don't you understand? She's not going to stop. She's never going to stop. The trial was a humiliation, and Margaret Holloway doesn't forgive humiliation. Clara pulled her arm free. Then I'll fight. Fight against her. She has money men power. And I have the truth. Clara's jaw tightened. I'm done running, Thomas. I spent my whole marriage running from problems, hoping they'd go away. They never did. She looked him in the eye. Your stepmother wants a war fine. She'll get one. Thomas stared at her like she was insane. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, but at least I'll die standing. Thomas shook his head slowly. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the stupidest. Probably both. Clara moved to the door. Now get out of here before someone sees you. Wait. Thomas hesitated. There's something else. What? He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The letter. The one I forged. He held it out to her. I kept the original. The one my stepmother dictated. In her own handwriting. Clara's heart stopped. Why would you keep that insurance? In case she ever turned on me. Thomas laughed bitterly. Looks like it came in handy after all. Clara took the paper with trembling hands. She unfolded it and scanned the contents, Margaret Holloway's neat, precise handwriting, laying out exactly what the forged letter should say. Word for word. This proves it, Clara breathed. This proves she orchestrated everything. It proves she's a liar. Whether anyone believes it is another matter. Clara looked up at Thomas, really looked at him. He wasn't the monster she'd thought he was. He was weak, yes. Cowardly, absolutely. But underneath all that fear was a man who'd been trapped by his family just as surely as Clara had been trapped by hers. Thank you, she said quietly. Thomas blinked. What? Thank you. For the warning. For the letter. She paused. For finally doing the right thing. He stared at her for a long moment. His eyes glistened. Don't thank me yet, he said. Margaret finds out I talked to you, she'll kill me herself. Then don't let her find out. Thomas laughed, a short, harsh sound. Easier said than done. He turned toward the door, then stopped. Garrett's a lucky man, he said without looking back. My brother never deserved you. Neither did any of us. He walked out into the morning light. Clara watched him go, the letter clutched in her hand. Then she started planning. Silas returned an hour later to find Clara sitting at the table, Margaret's letter spread out in front of her. Where did you get that? Clara told him everything. When she finished, Silas's face was pale. We need to leave. Tonight. No. Clara. I said no. She stood. I'm not running anymore. This ends here. She wants to burn down the clinic with you inside. Then we make sure she can't. Silas grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. I've lost everyone I've ever loved. I am not losing you too. Do you understand? and I'm not letting her win." Clara's eyes blazed. "She took my husband. She took my reputation. She tried to take my life. I will not let her take this too." "What's this? A barn. A few bottles of medicine. Hope." Clara's voice cracked. "She wants to destroy the hope I've built, the lives I've saved, the people who finally have someone fighting for them." She gripped his arms. "If I run now, I'm telling everyone who believed in me that they were wrong to trust me. I'm telling Margaret Holloway that she can bully and threaten and burn her way to victory. And I refuse to do that." Silas stared at her. "You're going to get us both killed." "Maybe." Clara lifted her chin. "But we're going to make her work for it." Silence stretched between them. Then slowly Silas's grip loosened. His expression shifted from fear to resignation to something that looked almost like admiration. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "I know. And the bravest." "I know that too." He pulled her close. "If we're doing this," he murmured against her hair, "we're doing it together. Together. And if things go wrong, they won't. If they do—" He pulled back, his eyes intense. "Promise me you'll run. Promise me you'll save yourself." Clara held his gaze. "I promise," she lied. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Silas rode to Sarah's farm and returned with reinforcements, 3 men from the surrounding homesteads who owed Clara for saving their families. Maria Santos arrived with her husband and 2 brothers armed with farm tools and fierce determination. By nightfall, there were 12 people gathered at the clinic. "She'll come with more," Silas said. "Maybe 20 men, maybe more. Then we'll have to be smarter." Clara looked around at the faces watching her, tired, scared, but resolute. "She's expecting an easy target. A woman alone. We're going to show her how wrong she is." "How?" Maria's husband asked. Clara smiled. "By fighting back." They worked through the night. Silas positioned men around the property, hidden in shadows, armed with rifles. Sarah set up a makeshift hospital station inside the main cabin in case anyone got hurt. Maria and the other women gathered supplies, water bandages, weapons. And Clara waited. Midnight passed, then 1 in the morning. 2. Nothing. "Maybe Thomas was wrong," Silas said. "Maybe she changed her mind." Clara shook her head. "She didn't change her mind. She's just waiting for us to let our guard down. We can't stay awake forever." "We won't have to." Clara pointed toward the horizon. "Look." Torches. Dozens of them flickering in the darkness, moving slowly but steadily toward the ranch. Clara's heart hammered. "She's here." The torches came closer. Clara counted them as they approached. 20, 30, more. "There's too many." Maria whispered, her voice tight with fear. "We can't fight that many." "We're not fighting," Clara said. "Not yet." "Then what are we doing?" Clara didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the lead rider, a figure in black sitting tall in the saddle, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. Margaret Holloway had come herself. "Everyone stay hidden," Clara said. "No one moves until I give the signal." "Clara!" Silas grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "Ending this." She pulled free and walked toward the approaching mob. Alone. "Clara?" Silas's voice cracked. "Clara, get back here." She didn't stop. The torches halted 50 yards from the clinic. Margaret dismounted slowly, her movements deliberate, theatrical. Behind her, a sea of men with weapons waited, their faces hard and hungry for violence. "Mrs. Brennan," Margaret's voice carried across the distance. "I must say, I didn't expect you to come out and greet us. I didn't expect you to bring an army to burn down a barn. This isn't just about the barn." Margaret stepped forward. "This is about justice." "Justice?" Clara laughed. "You wouldn't know justice if it spit in your face." Margaret's smile flickered. "Careful. You're outnumbered. Am I? Clara raised her hand. Behind her, figures emerged from the darkness. Silas, Sarah, Maria and her family, the farmers and immigrants and forgotten people who had found hope in Clara's clinic. 12 against 30. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew it wasn't enough. But Clara stood tall anyway. These people came here because they believe in me, Clara said. They believe in what I'm building, and they're not going to let you destroy it. Margaret looked at the ragtag group with something like amusement. A few Mexicans, a Negro, some dirt farmers. She laughed. You think this rabble can stop me? I think they're braver than every man standing behind you. Brave and dead are often the same thing. Maybe. Clara took another step forward. But you're forgetting something. What's that? Clara pulled out the letter, Margaret's letter, the one Thomas had given her, and held it up. I have proof, Clara said. Proof that you dictated the forgery. Proof that you orchestrated everything, in your own handwriting. Margaret's face went pale. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Clara's voice was steady. What matters is that if anything happens to me tonight, anything at all, this letter goes straight to the territorial governor, along with Sarah Cooper's testimony, along with Dr. Webb's diagnosis. She paused. Along with a signed statement from your stepson admitting his role in the conspiracy. Silence. The men behind Margaret shifted uncomfortably. Some of them exchanged glances. A few lowered their torches. You're bluffing, Margaret said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Try me. Thomas would never betray me. Thomas already has. Clara's eyes bore into Margaret's. He's tired of being afraid, tired of doing your dirty work, tired of living under your thumb. He's weak. He's free. Clara stepped closer. And soon everyone will know the truth. About Emmett, about Dr. Webb, about everything you've done to protect your precious family name. Margaret's composure cracked. Her hands trembled. Her jaw tightened. You think you've won? Her voice rose. You think some letters and witnesses are going to stop me? I think you're standing at a crossroads, Mrs. Holloway. Clara's voice softened. You can walk away right now. Take your men, go home, and let this end. Or you can keep pushing, keep fighting, and watch everything you've built crumble around you. You have no power here. I have the truth, and sooner or later, the truth always wins. Margaret stared at her. The torches flickered. The wind moaned. The men behind Margaret waited uncertain, confused. And then Margaret did something Clara didn't expect. She laughed. The truth. Margaret shook her head. You actually believe that, don't you? You believe that truth and justice will prevail, that good people always win in the end. Her eyes hardened. Let me tell you something about truth, Mrs. Brennan. Truth is whatever the powerful say it is. Truth is whatever people are willing to believe. And in this territory, people believe in me. Not anymore. We'll see about that. Margaret raised her hand. Burn it down. The men hesitated. I said burn it down. Still no one moved. What are you waiting for? Margaret spun to face her army. I'm paying you to follow orders. Now burn this place to the ground. One of the men, a grizzled farmer Clara didn't recognize, cleared his throat. Ma'am, with respect, the lady has a point. Excuse me. If she really has that proof and something happens to her tonight, we're all going to hang. He looked around at the other men. I didn't sign up to swing from a rope. You signed up to do what you're told. I signed up for money, not suicide. Margaret's face contorted with rage. You coward! He's not a coward! Another man stepped forward. He's smart. We all are. And we're not dying for your grudge. One by one, the men began to lower their torches. Some dropped them entirely. Others turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Within minutes, Margaret Holloway stood alone. Her army had abandoned her. Clara watched the last of the men fade into the night. Her heart was pounding. her legs trembling, but she forced herself to stay calm. It was over. It was finally no. Margaret lunged. She moved faster than Clara expected, pulling a derringer from her skirt and leveling it at Clara's chest. "You think you've won?" Margaret's eyes were wild. "You think you can take everything from me and walk away?" Clara froze. The barrel was inches from her heart. "Margaret, shut up, shut up!" Margaret's hand shook. "I gave Emmett everything. Everything. I raised him like my own son. I gave him the best education, the best opportunities. And what did he do? He married you. A nobody. A nothing. I loved him. You destroyed him." Margaret's voice cracked. "He was going to be somebody. He was going to carry on the Holloway name. And you dragged him down into the dirt and watched him die. I tried to save him." "Liar!" The gun wavered. Margaret's finger tightened on the trigger. Clara closed her eyes. "Margaret!" A new voice cut through the night. Clara's eyes flew open. Thomas Holloway stood at the edge of the torchlight, his face pale, his hands raised. "Thomas!" Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I came to stop you." He moved closer. "This has to end, Mother. Don't call me that." "Why not? You raised me. You shaped me. You made me into everything. I am a liar, a coward, a fraud." His voice broke. "I'm done. I'm done being your weapon." "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Thomas took another step. "Emmett was my brother, my real brother, and I helped you destroy his wife. I helped you frame an innocent woman. I helped you cover up a murder. Dr. Webb was an accident. Dr. Webb was a threat, and you eliminated him." Thomas's eyes glistened. "Just like you eliminate everyone who stands in your way." Margaret's hand dropped slightly. The gun was no longer pointed at Clara's heart. "Thomas, please." "No." He shook his head. "No more pleading. No more manipulation. I've spent my whole life being afraid of you. Afraid of what you'd do if I disobeyed. Afraid of being thrown out, cut off, left with nothing." He laughed bitterly. "But you know what nothing is better than this. Nothing is better than being your puppet. I loved you. You controlled me. There's a difference." Margaret stared at him. For the first time, Clara saw something other than rage in her eyes. Fear. "The letter Clara has," Thomas continued. "I gave it to her. Your handwriting, your words, your plan. I kept it as insurance in case you ever turned on me." He paused. "But I should have turned it over years ago. I should have stopped you before you destroyed more lives." "Thomas, put down the gun, Mother." His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "It's over." Margaret looked at him, then at Clara, then at the small crowd of witnesses watching from behind. Her arm fell to her side. The derringer slipped from her fingers, landing in the snow with a soft thud. And Margaret Holloway, the woman who had terrorized Clara's existence, who had killed to protect her secrets, who had burned everything she touched, crumpled. She fell to her knees, her body shaking, her face hidden in her hands. "I just wanted him to be happy," she sobbed. "I just wanted Emmett to have a good life, to marry someone worthy, to continue the legacy his father started." Clara didn't move. "When he got sick, when I realized he was dying..." Margaret's voice cracked. "I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept that this was how it ended. So I looked for someone to blame, someone to punish." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "You were easy to hate. You were an outsider, a nobody, someone who had taken my boy away from me. If I could make you suffer, maybe it would hurt less." "But it didn't," Clara said quietly. "No." Margaret shook her head. "It didn't." Silence fell over the ranch. Clara looked at this woman, this monster who had tried to kill her, who had left her tied to a fence in a blizzard, who had murdered an innocent doctor and framed her for her husband's death. She should hate her. She had every right to hate her. But standing here watching Margaret break apart, Clara felt something she didn't expect. Pity. "I forgive you," The words came out before Clara could stop them. Margaret's head snapped up. What? I forgive you. Clara crouched down until they were eye level. Not for your sake, for mine. I've spent too much of my life being angry, being afraid, being consumed by what other people did to me. She paused. I'm done. I'm letting it go. How can you after everything I... Because holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Clara stood. You've already lost everything, Margaret. Your power, your reputation, your family. Hating you isn't going to give me anything back. It's just going to keep me trapped. Margaret stared at her tears running down her weathered cheeks. I don't understand you, she whispered. You don't have to. Clara turned to Silas, who was watching with something like awe. It's over. Let's go home. She started walking toward the clinic. Wait. Clara stopped, turned. Margaret was still on her knees, but her voice was different now. Smaller. Rawer. I'm sorry. 2 words. Just 2 words. But Clara could hear the weight behind them. The weight of years of pride crumbling, of walls falling, of a woman finally seeing herself clearly for the first time. I know, Clara said. She walked away. The next few days were a blur. Sheriff Dawson arrived the following morning, alerted by one of the farmers who had abandoned Margaret's mob. He took statements from Clara, from Silas, from Sarah, from Thomas. Margaret Holloway was arrested. The charges were extensive conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, attempted arson, the suspected poisoning of Dr. Marcus Webb. The territorial prosecutor promised a full investigation. A trial was scheduled for the spring. Clara didn't attend the preliminary hearings. She had more important things to do. The clinic was busier than ever. Word had spread about the confrontation at the ranch, about the woman who had stood down Margaret Holloway's army with nothing but the truth, about the community that had risen up to protect one of their own. Patients came from farther away now. Not just the forgotten and the rejected, but ordinary townspeople too. Families who had shunned Clara before now waited in line, avoiding her eyes, mumbling apologies that she accepted with grace. They don't deserve your kindness, Silas said one evening. Maybe not. Clara finished bandaging a young girl's sprained wrist. But I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. That sounds selfish. It is selfish, she smiled. But it's also the only way I know how to move forward. Silas watched her work. The firelight caught the angles of his face, softening the scar, warming his gray eyes. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. Clara looked up. For what? For everything. For surviving. For fighting back. For building something beautiful out of all this ugliness. He moved closer. You're the strongest person I've ever known. I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. Same thing? She laughed. He smiled. And for a moment, everything was perfect. Spring came slowly to Wyoming. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass and stubborn wildflowers. The creek behind the ranch thawed, its water running clear and cold. Birds returned, filling the air with sounds that had been missing all winter. Clara stood on the porch of the clinic, her clinic watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Silas came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything. She leaned back against his chest. Where I was a year ago, where I am now, how much has changed. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Good. Definitely good. She turned to face him. A year ago, I was a widow accused of murder, left to die in a blizzard by people who were supposed to love me. I had nothing. No hope. No future. No reason to believe things would ever get better. And now? Clara smiled. Now I have a home, a purpose, a community. She reached up and touched his face. I have you. Silas caught her hand, pressed his lips to her palm. Marry me. Clara's breath stopped. What? I know I asked you to stay. I know you said yes, but I want more than that. His eyes were intense, vulnerable, full of everything he'd been afraid to feel for so long. I want you to be my wife. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build something with you, a family, a future, everything I thought I'd lost forever. Silas. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything. He pulled something from his pocket, a simple gold band worn with age. This was my mother's. She gave it to my father the day they got married. He wore it until the day he died. He held it out to her. I want you to have it. Clara's eyes blurred with tears. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Silas lifted her off her feet and spun her around, his laughter mixing with hers in the cool morning air. When he set her down, he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. I love you, he said. I love you too. Clara rose on her toes and kissed him. Now let's go tell Sarah. She's going to be insufferable about being right. Right about what? She told me the first day we met that you were a good man who just needed someone to remind him. Clara grinned. I think she's earned the right to gloat. They walked toward the main cabin hand in hand as the sun rose higher over the mountains. The wedding was small. Just Clara and Silas, Sarah as the witness, and the little community of patients and friends who had become family over the past months. They gathered outside the clinic on a warm afternoon in late May, wildflowers blooming all around them, the sky impossibly blue above. A traveling preacher performed the ceremony. Clara wore a simple white dress that Maria had helped her sew. Silas wore his best shirt, the one without patches, and had actually combed his hair for the occasion. They exchanged vows. Simple words, honest words, words that needed no embellishment. I promise to stand by you, Silas said, through storms and sunshine, through sickness and health, through everything that's come before and everything that's yet to come. I promise to love you, Clara said, not despite your scars, but because of them, not in spite of your past, but alongside it, today, tomorrow, and every day after. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, a cheer went up from the small crowd. Maria's children threw flower petals. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes and pretended she wasn't crying, and Clara kissed her husband for the first time as his wife. That evening, after the guests had gone and the ranch had quieted, Clara and Silas sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the stars emerge one by one. Mrs. Garrett, Silas said, testing the name. How does it feel? Strange. Clara laughed. Good strange, but strange. You can still use Brennan if you want. I won't be offended. No. She shook her head. I'm done being Clara Brennan. She was a victim, a survivor, someone things happened to. She looked at him. Clara Garrett is different. She's a builder, a healer, someone who makes things happen. I like the sound of that. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, feeling the warmth of each other's presence. Do you ever think about what would have happened? Clara asked quietly. If you hadn't found me that night, sometimes. And Silas was quiet for a moment. I think I would have died, he said finally. Not right away, not physically, but the part of me that was still alive, the part that still believed in something, I think it would have faded away. He took her hand. You saved me, Clara, just as much as I saved you. I guess we saved each other. I guess we did. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. What happens now? She asked. What do you mean? I mean, what's next? The clinic is doing well. We're married. Margaret is in prison. The people who wanted me dead are gone or scattered. She paused. For the first time in years, I don't have anything to fight against. I don't know what to do with that. Silas thought about it. Maybe that's the point, he said. Maybe the fighting was never supposed to be forever. It was just supposed to get us here to a place where we can finally rest. I don't know if I know how to rest. Then we'll learn together. He squeezed her hand. We'll wake up each morning without fear. We'll help the people who need helping. We'll watch the seasons change and the years pass. We'll grow old together, surrounded by friends, by family, by everything we've built. That sounds boring, Clara said. Does it? No. She smiled. It sounds perfect. The months that followed proved Silas right. Summer brought new patients and new challenges. Clara expanded the clinic, added a small school where she taught reading and arithmetic to the children of immigrant families. Silas managed the ranch-raised cattle, mended fences, and spent every evening by Clara's side. Fall arrived with cooler winds and golden leaves. The harvest was good. The community grew. People who had once scorned Clara now sought her advice, her healing, her friendship. Winter came again, but this time it held no terror. Clara watched the snow fall from the warmth of her home, her husband's arm around her shoulders, a fire crackling in the hearth. And on a quiet morning in early March, almost exactly 1 year after Silas had pulled her from that frozen fence post, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She didn't tell Silas right away. She held the secret close for a few days, savoring it, letting the reality sink in. But when she finally did tell him, sitting across from him at breakfast, his coffee halfway to his lips, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. The cup clattered to the table. Coffee splashed everywhere. Silas stared at her like she'd just told him the sky was falling. We're having a baby. Yes. He was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms, lifting her off her feet, spinning her in circles while she laughed and protested and held on tight. I'm going to be a father, he breathed. I never thought, after Abigail, I never thought I'd... His voice broke. Clara cupped his face in her hands. You're going to be an amazing father, she said. Our child is going to be so lucky to have you. And you. He pressed his forehead to hers. They're going to have the strongest, bravest, most stubborn mother in the entire territory. I prefer determined. Stubborn. She kissed him to shut him up. The baby, a girl, was born on a warm afternoon in late September. They named her Hope. It was Clara's idea. Silas had suggested practical names, family names, names that meant something. But Clara had shaken her head. She's proof that good things can come from terrible beginnings, Clara said, holding her daughter for the first time. She's proof that no matter how dark things get, there's always a reason to keep going. She looked up at Silas, tears streaming down her face. She's our hope. That's who she is. Silas couldn't argue with that. He didn't want to. 5 years later, Clara stood on the porch of the clinic rebuilt, twice expanded 3 times now, a proper medical facility that served half the territory and watched the sunset. So much had changed. Hope was 4 years old with her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn streak. She was currently chasing chickens around the yard, shrieking with laughter, while Silas pretended to be unable to catch her. Sarah had passed the previous spring peacefully in her sleep, after a long illness that even Clara's skills couldn't heal. But her legacy lived on in the nurses she'd trained and the patients she'd saved in the community she'd helped build. The Holloways were gone. Margaret had died in prison alone and forgotten. Walter had sold the ranch and moved east. Thomas had disappeared somewhere out west, trying to build a new life under a new name. Clara hoped he found peace. She hoped they all did. The clinic, now called Cooper Garrett Medical Center, served everyone who needed help, regardless of race or wealth or background. Clara had trained a dozen nurses over the years, and 2 of them were now doctors in their own right. She had built something that would outlast her. She had mattered. Silas appeared on the porch, Hope perched on his shoulders, both of them breathless and grinning. Mama. Hope reached for her. I caught the big chicken. Did you? Clara scooped her daughter into her arms. Which one? The mean one, with the red face. That's impressive. Even Papa can't catch that one. Papa's old, Hope said solemnly. Silas gasped in mock offense. Clara burst out laughing. Later, after Hope was asleep and the house was quiet, Clara and Silas sat together on the porch, just as they had 1,000 times before. Happy? Silas asked. Clara considered the question. A year ago, she would have said yes without thinking. But now, after everything, she understood that happiness wasn't a destination, it was a journey. There would be hard days ahead, loss and pain and struggle. That was just life. But there would also be moments like this, quiet moments, perfect moments, moments that made all the fighting worthwhile. Yes, she said finally, I'm happy. Silas took her hand. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and familiar. I love you, Clara Garrett. I love you too, Silas Garrett. They sat together in the fading light, watching the stars emerge, listening to the sounds of a world at peace. And Clara thought about the girl she used to be, the terrified, frozen, broken girl tied to a fence post in a blizzard, praying for someone to save her. That girl was gone now. In her place stood a woman who had fought for her life, her freedom, her future. A woman who had turned tragedy into triumph, hatred into hope, endings into beginnings. A woman who had learned the most important lesson of all, that the darkest nights always give way to dawn, and that even in the coldest storms, there is warmth waiting for those brave enough to seek it. Clara Garrett had been left for dead, but she had chosen to live, and that choice had made all the difference. The end.